I will call Dr Rupa Hook to move the motion. I will then call the Minister to respond. I remind other members that they may only make a speech with prior permission from the member in charge of the debate and the Minister. There will not be an opportunity for the member in charge to wind up, as is the convention for 30-minute debates. Order, order. Dr Rupa Hook to move the motion.
Thank you, Mrs Lewell, and it is a true pleasure to serve under your chairship. It was over a decade ago that the automotive industry, and indeed the world, was rocked by Dieselgate, the VW emissions scandal. The public was horrified to learn how the trusted German car giant Volkswagen, the one that gave us the Herbie Kids film franchise, the one that gave us those iconic circular badges that were so beloved of the Beastie Boys, they found out that these had been knowingly faking vehicle emissions tests via defeat devices. That is software designed to alter a vehicle's performance, falsifying results and limited emissions during the regulatory testing period, only to switch to their true polluting selves when they were driven on open roads. And VW's range of diesel compact cars had been marketed as a green alternative to petrol, but it was found that they'd actually been knowingly cooking the books to the points that the US Environmental Protection Agency found their top people guilty of conspiracy to defraud customers. Confidence was shattered. Share prices nosedived. Reputational damage was done. Vehicles were recalled. Fines were paid out. Heads rolled at the managerial level. And the once encouraged fuel diesel became discredited, and its fate in London, I feel, was sealed finally by you, Les. But we were assured lessons would be learned. Yet, despite the outlawing of defeat devices, the problem seems to be wider than originally thought. Dieselgate 2, the sequel, is proceeding very slowly through the courts. I think there's a number of cases. And that one accuses multiple models and manufacturers of the same thing, spewing out dangerous, excessive emissions due to cheat technology, deceiving drivers, knowingly doing this. And, you know, it feels a bit like match fixing for us of a certain age. Bruce Grobbelaar is coming to mind here. And consumers have been conned, once again, into believing they were driving greener, cleaner diesel cars. And there have been rigged results here. And it feels almost you can't go on the internet now without kind of some sort of pop-up advert rearing its head. Have you driven a Mercedes, Ford, Nissan, Renault, Citroën, Peugeot during X and Y years? If so, click here to see how much compensation you could get. It's all a little bit ambulance chasing, isn't it? I certainly will.
First of all, can I commend the Honourable Lady for Ealing Central and Acton for bringing this forward? And she's right to say that this is something that just doesn't happen in England. It happens across all of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Vehicles registered in Northern Ireland in 2015 were amongst those fitted with illegal software during the Volkswagen emissions scandal. Enforcement action uncovered diesel lorries operating in Northern Ireland with illegal emissions cheating hardware, deliberately disabling pollution controls. For 17 years, our MOT system in Northern Ireland failed to properly test diesel emissions, allowing such vehicles to operate undetected for too long, whilst damaging air quality and undermining trust in regulations. It does the Honourable Lady agree that more must be done to close regulatory gaps, strengthen enforcement and ensure that defeat devices are fully eliminated from all our roads in all of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
Yes, the honourable gentleman makes such an excellent point, as he always does, and it is an honour to be intervened on by him. This was done with intent all over the British Isles, as he says, all our nation states. And he talked of the VW scandal. As I say, there could be worse round the corner. VW could just be the tip of a very murky iceberg. And yet, despite the outlawing, as he said, of these defeat devices, I mean, look, this isn't a subject, as he points out, actually. It's not just one about the men in the white coats in their laboratory technical results. This is not a fringe issue. It affects all of our constituents. It has real-life consequences. And air pollution is one of our most pressing environmental challenges. Noxious nitrogen oxide emissions can cause respiratory illness, cardiovascular disease, and childhood asthma, even premature deaths, which have been quantified. In London, the city where we are now, where I'm an MP, the devastating human impact was so tragically illustrated with the desperately sad case of Ella Hissy Deborah, dead at just 9 years old, and the first ever case where the cause on the death certificate was pollution. And the family had lived by the South Circular. I've got the North Circular in my seat, the South Circular. Her mum, Rosamond, has been such a tireless campaigner pushing for Ella's Law. And there's also been Mums for Lungs, who've done great work on this. And Parent Power, who've had a breakfast event this morning over in the other side of the building. Look, you wouldn't... clean air is just... It's not a nice to have. It's an essential. You wouldn't force-feed a kid dirty water, yet we expect them to breathe toxic air. And while Sadiq Khan's ultra-low emission zone in this city has helped clean dirty diesel from London, we do know that children and vulnerable communities are the most susceptible. And these cars were bought in good faith. Remember the 2001 budget of Gordon Brown, in fact. In those days, diesel was incentivised. It was seen as environmentally superior to petrol because of the miles per gallon, because in those days people were not looking at NOx, they were looking more at CO2. And that year's budget, I think the road tax and certain things, if you had a company fleet, actually encouraged diesel. And in the aftermath of this scandal, the VW scandal, and I'd say just like the other ones I've seen since I've been here, contaminated blood, post office, this is a genuine scandal. We've actually seen the percentage of diesels as market share in this country fall from 50% in 2014 to just 5% now. But with this bigger Dieselgate 2 on the horizon, if defeat devices have dishonestly been fitted to vehicles and they've emitted pollutants at levels way beyond legal levels, way beyond the expectations of what consumers were led to believe, it does leave huge holes in government enforcement and regulatory credibility. It's poisoning people, and I've got a range of questions for my honourable friend, the Minister. And, you know, although these vehicles are not being sold from new anymore, figures from Mums for Lungs say that 7.5 million diesel cars are still on our roads. That's a quarter of all UK cars. But their emissions are responsible for 30% of total NOx emissions. And there's also the vans, the buses, the HGVs, if you add it all up. Action must occur. So, we do know that in autumn 2024, the Department of Transport confirmed that it is investigating the possible use of defeat device trickery by a number of manufacturers. But rather than delve into the lengthy legal proceedings underway today, I want to raise questions about this government inquiry, because it's at best sketchy, and it's bound up with public health and consumer protection. It all kind of seems shrouded in secrecy. And there is the prospect here of illegally high emissions and asthma in the equation. So every moment that the results are delayed puts more children's lungs at risk. And even at a time when everyone wants growth, Mums for Lungs have calculated that the UK economy is losing. Inaction on Dieselgate is expected to cost our economy 36 billion in the next 14 years. So, you know, there are many reasons why we should do this. So I am asking the Minister, my good honourable friend, to step up a gear. The sheer number of potential claimants of Dieselgate 2, which is 1.8 million potential cars, dwarfs the eventual settlement that came out of VW Gate. The 2022 settlement compensated only 91,000 consumers. So this affects every constituency in the nation. Your constituents as well, Mrs. Newell. So, the questions I have. What is the current status of the department's investigation? What's the timeline for its commencement? Where is it now? When will it conclude? And what teeth does it have? I.e., what are the enforcement powers that the department's prepared to deploy in cases of non-compliance? The Environment Act of 2021 strengthened the government's ability to require manufacturers to recall vehicles where there's reasonable grounds to believe they do not meet applicable environmental standards. Is the department prepared to use these powers where appropriate? And where does the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency fit into this process? What happens to vehicles currently on UK roads if they're found to be emitting unlawfully high levels of pollutants? Will the government consider requiring their temporary suspension from use until they're brought into compliance? Could they have a little bit of tinkering and be okay? After all, excess emissions may already lead to 16,000 premature deaths in the UK and 30,000 new cases of childhood asthma, according to one report from an international climate think tank. And as I say, Mums for Lungs have sent me overnight a whole load of new figures that I've not entirely processed, but I can pass them to the Minister. And if manufacturers are found to have breached the rules, who bears the financial burden of remedial action? Surely not the consumers who bought these vehicles in good faith. They thought they were doing the right thing. They believed that they were compliant. And how does the government intend to safeguard public health in the interim? In 2016, the then Tory government launched an inquiry into the use of defeat devices by VW, but ultimately they didn't prosecute. And the Transport Select Committee at the time, they expressed concerns at the DFT's ambivalence towards VW's use of defeat devices. And they called the department being too slow to assess the use of its powers, i.e. they were asleep at the wheel. Now, this minister is different to that minister, and I'm sure he's not going to repeat the mistakes of the last Tory government. So now there is this second chance. The DFT should clearly prioritise the interests of the public and consumers with its current investigation. A decade after we were duped over diesel in the first emissions scandal, the public shouldn't be left wondering whether enforcement powers will be used if wrongdoing's found. And court proceedings, as I say, can take forever, but we must have assurances of urgency, transparency and consequence in the government's own investigation that's within its control. Communities deserve clean air. Consumers deserve honesty and protection. And I'm no Jeremy Clarkson, but as someone who, actually, I cycle more than I drive, but I do both, and I take public transport every weekday, I do find that it's difficult to know. It can be bewildering who's up, who's down, what's happening, because these goalposts are constantly changing. So what is it that's demonised? First it was petrol, then it was diesel. Now they've both been overtaken with electric, which we should all be doing. And I'm pleased to see the rollout of the Enviro 400 and 500 buses in London. But, you know, for the average consumer, it can be bewildering when the advice keeps changing and then, you know, feels a bit punitive. So environmental standards must mean what they say. If they're breached, there must be proportionate and decisive action. For far too long, motor manufacturers in the UK have victimised the public. They've misled consumers about pollution emitted by diesel engines, and they've put millions of citizens at risk simply because they live or work near roads. And, I mean, VW did recover their reputation to some extent, certainly on the, what's it called, the neighbourhood app, Nextdoor, that's the one. You see people still complaining that badges are being nicked from front of cars. So whoever's doing that, can you stop doing it? It's completely unnecessary to be removing the circular VW logo. But what I will say is that these companies should come clean and make things right with those that they've harmed. The government should do everything in its power to ensure that the public is in the driving seat. We should not have to wait, Ms. Liu, for Dieselgate 3.
The question is that this House has considered the matter of defeat devices in diesel vehicles. Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Pleasure to see you chairing this debate this morning, Ms. Liu, as my favourite sand dancer. Might I start by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Ealing Central in Acton, on securing this debate on defeat devices in diesel vehicles. This is an important subject which rightly attracts scrutiny from Parliament, from the public and campaigners. I also want to acknowledge the concerns my honourable friend set out in her parliamentary questions and recent public commentary, which reflects, I think, the strength of feeling about this issue and the need for transparency and accountability from both manufacturers and from regulators. Now, these concerns are entirely legitimate, and I welcome the opportunity to set out clearly how they align with the government's determination to uphold emission standards and to ensure that the public can have full confidence in the environmental performance of vehicles on our roads. Let me begin by reaffirming this government's commitment to delivering greener, cleaner transport and reducing harmful emissions that affect communities across the country. Road transport emissions have significant implications for public health, and we continue to take firm evidence-based action wherever practices risk undermining public trust or air quality. Alongside our compliance and enforcement work, we are delivering wider measures to cut harmful emissions, including supporting the transition to zero-emission vehicles, which my honourable friend referenced. We have consistently said that prohibited defeat devices are illegal, misleading for drivers, and can have negative impacts on the public. My department has considerably strengthened its oversight of vehicle emissions in recent years. Since 2016, the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency Market Surveillance Unit has carried out increasingly rigorous emissions testing programmes, using both laboratory and real-world methods to identify suspicious performance. DVSA actively investigates potential non-compliance, and where it identifies issues, manufacturers are required to take corrective action in line with DVSA's published enforcement policy. This government is undertaking a targeted and comprehensive programme of assessments, which formally commenced in early 2025, to assess a range of Euro 5 and Euro 6 diesel cars and vans produced between 2010 and 2018. And as my honourable friend would probably expect, we're focusing on vehicles with the greatest potential to cause harm. And our remediation actions are designed to reduce real-world emissions as quickly and as effectively as possible. Although these models are no longer entering the market, they remain on our roads, and the public quite rightly expect them to meet the standards set out at approval. I think at present there are 110 individual vehicle models that are under active investigation. I think that reflects really the scale and the complexity of the challenge. To be absolutely clear, every vehicle model within scope will undergo a full assessment, and manufacturers are now working to firm, defined deadlines. The DVSA has completed assessments on a number of models and is now reviewing detailed submissions from manufacturers, with further assessments underway. We will conclude the process as soon as evidence allows, to ensure that any findings are robust, fair and accountable. Where non-compliance is identified, manufacturers will be required to take corrective action, and enforcement will escalate where deadlines are not met. This approach is intended to achieve real-world improvements in air quality swiftly and fairly. The government has also been strengthening the enforcement framework available to regulators, and since 2018 it has been an offence to place vehicles containing prohibited defeat systems on the market, and my department is equipped to require swift corrective action to address non-compliance. We are also considering whether we need to go further and build on our existing powers under assimilated EU law to require compulsory environmental recalls to deliver the intended outcomes. Let me be clear that if non-compliance is confirmed, DVSA will require manufacturers to take whatever remedial action is necessary at no cost to consumers. And where any serious risk is evidenced, that remedial action must be taken forward without delay. On transparency, I fully recognise the public interest and understanding the outcomes of this work, and manufacturer-specific findings will be published once investigations are complete and decisions are final. This approach is entirely consistent with other market surveillance activity. Waiting until this point is important to ensure that due process is followed without avoiding prejudicing live investigations and maintain the integrity of any future enforcement action.
Would you give way?
Certainly will.
I'm grateful to the Minister for giving way. I'm liking what I'm hearing so far, because because up to now it's all been a bit mysterious, this inquiry. I just wonder if maybe it'd be an idea to meet with him, because just as a London MP, I have experiences of ULEZ as well. Certain, I remember we have a riding school in my seat, and an exemption was made for a horse box. So just, I don't know, having experience in London, what happens, it'd be good to talk through. Is it impossible in a debate like this at some point? Would you meet with me?
I mean, how could I refuse, Ms Llewellyn? Of course I will meet with my honourable friend. And of course, publishing, as you would appreciate, publishing incomplete or provisional findings would, I think, risk, again, misleading consumers and compromising the quality of the technical assessments underway. To support transparency, I'm pleased to say that the Department will shortly publish a dedicated gov.uk landing page. And now that will bring together all the emissions compliance publications. And once investigations are concluded, the final outcomes of this programme will be added to that page for full public access. This programme has been developed in close collaboration with the Department for Business, Trade and the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs and the UK Health Security Agency. This ensures that our approach draws on the full breadth of government expertise. This collective effort means our response is coordinated and informed by those who play a direct role in delivering cleaner, safer vehicles. We are closely following the Pan-Nox Group litigation concerning alleged defeat devices. Once the court hands down its judgment, we will, of course, consider carefully any implications, including whether changes are needed to our policy framework or enforcement approach. Internationally, we continue to work closely with regulators in EU member states. This collaboration helps us anticipate emerging issues, align on best practice and ensures that manufacturers face a coherent regulatory environment across markets. It reinforces our ability to act decisively where cross-border issues arise, recognising that emissions compliance is a global challenge. To conclude, Ms Llewellyn, a great deal has been achieved and more is underway. The government is delivering a thorough and proportionate programme designed to address potential non-compliance swiftly, transparently and in line with our legal duties. Our shared objective is clear: to deliver cleaner air, protect public health, uphold public confidence and ensure that the vehicles on our roads meet the standards the public expects and deserves.
The question is that this House has considered the matter of defeat devices in diesel vehicles. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting is suspended until 2:30 p.m.